Letter to Southampton, October 5, 1795. Were you a stranger to Southampton, I might offer you many full pages upon its delightful situation, and the many charms of its environs, for it cannot be disputed that this town and neighborhood afford more of pleasing scenery, convenience, and accommodation, than most other spots in England. Within the town, the sick and the feeble have the benefit of sea bathing, the well and the dissipated the amusements of a playhouse, public rooms, card playing, and assemblies. Without it, all may find recreation the various promenades, either for walking, riding, rowing, or sailing, being such as to invite and to gratify even the most fastidious. Pleasant walks, delightful water excursions, and the finest forest rides abound on every quarter, offering all the variety of open country, enclosed fields, sea and river views, and woodland scenery. Nor are the more common and striking lions of the neighborhood less abundant, there being, within reach, a multitude of towns, places, and objects which usually attract the attention of strangers, such as Portsmouth and its dockyard, Gosport and its hospital, the Isle of Wight, the Fleet at Spithead, Winchester, Lymington, Lyndhurst, Netley Abbey, etc. etc. In short, Southampton would seem to be one of the few places equally calculated for the invalid, the idle, and the gay, for each may find the pursuit fitted for his habits and inclinations. Without the too common excess of dissipation, this place offers every recreation and amusement that a rational mind can desire, and, in the happy combination of its rural scenery, it presents all the first requisites of a summer retirement. Nor will the mere Epicurean visitor be disappointed, for the market is plenteously supplied with the good things of life. The fish, poultry, butcher's meat, and vegetables are not only abundant, but also the best of their kind. The town is commonly well filled with company during the summer, but, this year, from the attraction of a camp and the crowd of military assembled to proceed with the expedition, it is overflowing, and consequently all is life and motion. Still, those who seek retirement can readily find it, whether in the less public parts of the town, in the hedgerow path, the lonely seaside walk, or, in pensive ramble, amid the deep shades of the forest, or they may escape the busy crowd by retiring to the still surface and tranquil scenes of the river. The town itself bears every appearance of neatness and comfort, and the many handsome villas near it not only improve the surrounding scenery, but also impose a general air of wealth and opulence. As you know my habit of visiting what are called the lions of a place as soon as possible after my arrival, you will conclude that I have not neglected the encampment near Southampton, and, in this, you will judge correctly, for, verily, I have not been unmindful of it. I have made it a visit of very attentive inspection, and much do I wish it were possible for words to convey to you all the host of feelings that rushed into my mind upon the occasion. A whole volume of mixed sensations crowded my bosom, and I scarcely knew which was predominant. Viewing the soldiers in full contemplation of the strict order, the manly deportment, and the elevated enthusiasm of the character, my mind traversed, in hasty review, all the perils and hardships, the glory and honors which attach to a military life. I felt a sense of pride and gratification in seeing so fine a body of men ready to join in our expedition. My imagination saw all the inviting forms of success before them. I observed them in battle on the opposite side of the Atlantic, felt honored in their bravery, hailed them victorious, and, crowned with the laurels they had won, reconduct them, in safety, to their home and their friends. Yet the bright picture was not without its shades. Restless fancy went on to busy herself in gloomy comparisons, in painful contrasts, and afflicting reverses. Viewing the brilliancy and comfort of a domestic camp in the peaceful fields of England, she called up ideas of a confused and tumultuous encampment upon the enemy's soil, threatened by a daring foe, routed by bloodthirsty cohorts, or stormed by a horde of merciless brigands. Next appeared the dire confusion of battle, the distress of defeat, and the dread effects of panic, with all the horrid scene of bleeding wounds, dying groans, and mangled bodies, and still worse than these were pictured the fatal ills of climate, yellow fever opening her all-devouring jaws, and exposing a contrast yet more afflictive than all the perils of battle or defeat. Although, in my mind, the more happy face of the picture maintained its impression, I am sorry to believe that the general sensation of the country is in sympathy with the opposite. A degree of horror seems to have overspread the nation from the late destructive effects of the yellow fever, or, what the multitude denominates, the West India plague. So much so, that a sense of terror attaches to the very name of the West Indies, many even considering it synonymous with the grave, and, perhaps, it were not too much to say that all who have friends in the expedition apprehend more from disease than from the sword. Such discouraging sentiments, I am sorry to find, have not been concealed from the troops. The fearful farewell of desponding friends is every day and hour heedlessly or artfully sounded in their ears. People walking about the camp, attending at a review or a parade, or merely seeing parties of soldiers in the streets, are heard to exclaim, "Ah, poor fellows, you are going to your last home. What pity such brave men should go to that West India grave, to that hateful climate, to be killed by the plague. Poor fellows, goodbye, farewell. We shall never see you again." With such accents are the ears of the soldiers incessantly saluted, and the hopeless predictions are loudly echoed, for the worst of purposes, by the designing, whose turbulent spirits would feast in exciting discontent among the troops. But strongly as I would condemn every attempt or insinuation calculated to create even the feeblest ray of terror in the breasts of the soldiers, yet I cannot but be sensible that it is a service of imminent danger, and, while I look at these men with high admiration of their intrepid character, the recollection of the prevailing sentiment steals upon me, and my bosom heaves a silent pang in the consciousness that a great majority of them will never return. Still, I would hope that every soldier is governed by the same individual feelings as myself, and that each is fully impressed with the belief that it will be his lot to escape. With the greatest truth I may aver that, notwithstanding all the depressing rumors of the moment, and the trembling alarms of friends and relatives, I do not feel the slightest personal apprehension, either with respect to climate or disease. What shall prove to be my fate, amid all the chances of service, it were idle to conjecture, but I shall embark with the confident assurance of returning to my friends and to old England. It is the duty of soldiers to serve wheresoever their country requires, and hence the attempts to inspire them with dread of climate are not less cruel than mischievous. Designed to injure the country, they operate by distressing the feelings of the individual whose noble mind knows no fear of death from other cause, but, if he falls without a murmur, glorying in having devoted himself to his country, and calmly resigning himself to the fate of war. It does not appear that the expedition is so immediately upon the eve of sailing as is generally imagined. The whole of the troops are not yet assembled, nor are all the transports in readiness. Finding this the case, I have obtained leave of absence for a week, and have the prospect of seeing you again before my departure. Repeating my visit at the Inspector General's, I have learned, with some surprise, that my name is not upon the return of the hospital staff of this armament, and I begin to fear that my being ordered to Southampton has been the offspring of error. 2 other staff physicians are in the same predicament, and it is even probable that, like many of the more idle visitors, we have only made a trip to see the camp and go back again. It is not unlikely that we may find our names upon the St. Domingo staff, instead of the staff of the Leeward Islands, in which case we may expect to make a journey to Cork, to join the expedition about to sail from Ireland. This would be a disappointment to me beyond the mere inconvenience of again moving my person and baggage, for, in the Leeward Island division, I have acquaintances whom I had hoped to find my comrades on service, while, with the St. Domingo staff, there are very few persons to whom I am known. But I am prepared for all the uncertainties and disappointments I may have to encounter, considering the duties of my appointment as the great object of attention. I shall make it my study to remove whatever difficulties may occur by subduing them. Except in what regards individual connections, there is, perhaps, no question of choice between the 2 divisions of the armament, the service, so far as it respects our department, being essentially the same in one part of the West Indies as in another, and, if I should be ordered to Cork, I hope I have philosophy enough to soothe the disappointment by regarding the journey through Wales and Ireland, two countries I have long desired to visit, as, in some degree, a compensation. In my present pursuit I feel the necessity of establishing it as a principle to view occurrences in their best light, and, instead of repining that more cannot be obtained, to seek comfort from what falls in my path. Were we to adopt this as a leading maxim in all situations, it is more than possible that we might often have happy hours where we know only those of misery, for such a principle, applied with wisdom, would tend very much to blunt the sharp thorns of life. As if the evils of the world were not enough severe, we too commonly attach ourselves to the unhappy face of events, brood over fancied sorrows, and eagerly multiply our disappointments, wholly overlooking the more favorable features from which peace, harmony, and comfort might derive. Yet some there are, of men I think the worst. Poor imps! Unhappy if they can't be cursed. For ever brooding over misery's eggs. This gloomy tendency forms a remarkable characteristic between the people of England and those of France, for, while an Englishman, in afflictive contemplation, dwells on misfortune even to suicide, a Frenchman, let the affairs of the moment be never so adverse, always finds wherewithal to attach his better hopes, and surely, when any occurrence proves less happy than we had anticipated, it is wise policy rather to extract from it all the good we can, than to give ourselves wholly to the sadness of disappointment because it fulfills not our every wish. It has been said that the French know how to play the game of happiness better than the English. It may be so. But still, the principle may be carried to excess. Where it is the effect of a manly fortitude, and supports us against injury, misfortune, and disappointment, it is both amiable and virtuous, and may be dignified with the title of philosophy. But when it proceeds from frivolity or depravity, when it is connected with vice and dissipation, it becomes unworthy. Notwithstanding my determination to pass over the ills of my present employment as lightly as possible, I confess myself one of those dull Britons who would hope never to see the period when French levity shall supersede John Bull's sedate integrity. If a Frenchman dissipates the passing moment with greater mirth, still there is something in the more solid attachment and blunt honesty of an Englishman that more engages our esteem. As a stranger, or traveler, I look not for friendship or confidence, and have always hailed that urbanity and ease of manner which make the moment pleasant, or have been in good humor with that smooth and extended politeness which means nothing at all. But when residing among Englishmen, my countrymen, whom I regard as the relatives of one great family, I have always seemed to expect a degree of stability and sincerity which it were idle to look for in the mere traveller's hour. The plodding pursuits and sober attachments of the English possess not sufficient gout for the appetite of a Frenchman, whose life may be said to constitute one continued system of intrigue. In all his occupations he requires the high seasoning of variety. In whatever his pursuit, intrigue is always the condiment. From the conduct commonly pursued, it would seem a leading feature in the French character not to attach himself seriously or permanently to anything, but to avail himself of all passing circumstances. In this way he travels the great journey of life with less care and sorrow than the more sedate of other nations. I am aware you will plead very broad exceptions to this as a general character, and I readily admit them, for I have seen Frenchmen under misfortune whose patient submission has exhibited all the manly firmness of true dignity and philosophy. But I am wandering from my subject. Abruptly, therefore, good night.